Good.
So Lisa, I read your statement, and what jumped out to me the most was the line, "The shallow attempt to show progress." That's how you see the hiring of, or I guess naming of Tanya Snyder as the co-CEO.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's another PR move. We've seen a series of them. This isn't really a surprise. We've seen her name pop up in some statements along the way. But obviously, I think we all understand that making your wife or any other family member co-CEO of your company doesn't really achieve any meaningful change. And frankly, that's what we need here, right? We need meaningful change. We need accountability for what has happened over the last 20 years. And right now, my clients and I are sort of beating our heads against a wall because we don't know anything and nothing has happened.
What is it that you are waiting to happen? And are you guaranteed to see this report supposedly from this investigation?
No, we're not guaranteed to see it. We have asked to see it. We've demanded to see it. So has other entities. But the NFL hasn't committed one way or the other. And they've released a number of reports in the past. Most of the reports of the investigations they release. This one, they won't tell us whether they'll release it or not. The most we've ever seen came from your outlet when we saw what would appear to be a draft or information from a draft of that report. But, I have 40-plus clients who participated in an investigation almost a year ago, and they want to know what has happened with their information and what the league has found. And we haven't heard a word. We've heard nothing. And so we really believe that in order for there to be change here and accountability, there has to be transparency. We need to know what happened so that we can understand what the NFL is doing or assess what the NFL is doing to determine whether it's appropriate.
So you haven't asked you haven't asked Beth Wilkinson's office for the information. You're specifically asking the NFL, correct?
Right. I've asked the Wilkinson firm, but they're not going to give it to me. They can't give it to me. But
right.
It's got to come from the NFL. The NFL has to release it. And for whatever reason, right now they seem more intent on protecting Dan Snyder than in taking care of all of these men and women who came forward at great personal risk. And, it's a shame.
Just to rewind, it's been a while since, the article came out in the Washington Post. And as best as you can you air some of the grievances from some of your clients?
Well, first of all, there were a series of articles in the Washington Post. So there was a tremendous amount of really explosive reporting that revealed essentially 20 years of a pervasive culture of harassment and misogyny and abuse, where women were routinely harassed and assaulted, and nothing was done. It was commonplace in the company. It was just the way they did business. It was expected. It was awful, and we obviously saw the cheerleader story, where we learned about the the lewd videos that were produced without their knowledge or consent, and that was obviously outrageous. We've heard stories that range from, the top with Dan Snyder all the way down to interns. It's just this was an organization rife with harassment and abuse, and it just went unchecked for 20 years. And finally, people came forward and stepped up, and we're looking for there to be accountability and change. And but we can't do that until the NFL acts. So we're waiting.
So once the NFL does act, what would be a few examples of these meaningful changes that you and your clients are looking for that would prove to you that it's not just lip service, but Snyder, CEO of the Washington football team?
Well, I think one thing we all know, and what I have learned over the past year, is that everything at that organization comes from the owner. He runs that show. So obviously the most meaningful change would be a change of ownership. Mm-hmm. I don't know that that's going to happen But short of that, I think we need to see what's in the report to know specifically what happened. I know what happened with my 40 clients. I know that Beth Wilkinson's firm interviewed hundreds of women and men. And so there's a lot that went on there that even I don't know about. And so once we know what happened, how it was allowed to happen, then we can have a better idea of, all right, what are the changes that can be put in place that will actually be meaningful? But we can't do that in a vacuum, and right now we're all operating in a vacuum.
Well, Lisa, a lot of people think, I might be one of them, that the timing of this is interesting, and that Dan appointed Tanya as a co-CEO as kind of protection, maybe protection for maybe a suspension that is coming down the road. Now, maybe he's not suspended, maybe he is, but is that something you thought about? Is that something that you and Deborah have talked about?
Yeah, we have. I mean, I think he does everything for a reason, and I think the timing of anything he does isn't usually coincidental. So it may be that the report is about to be officially presented to the NFL and they're going to take some sort of action and he wants to placate the NFL. I don't know. It may be that he's put her in place so that she stays in place if he's suspended. It could be any of those things. But again, the problem is we just don't know what's happening. And the NFL has refused to even talk about the process or the timing.
So they don't even return your calls or emails?
Well, no, not really. We're writing letters, we're making phone calls, but they're not prepared to give us any information beyond what they put out in public, which really isn't much. So really, we don't know what's happening,
But Lisa,
like everyone, we're left to wait.
Can your clients file civil charges? Have you had the ability to maybe depose Daniel Snyder? Could you get to that point?
All of my clients have considered whatever available to them. These incidents happened, 15 years
beyond
ago.
The statute of limitations.
Exactly. So it's not that's not necessarily a route that we can take. The route that they were able to take was to participate in Beth Wilkinson's investigation.
Right.
And they all did that, and it wasn't easy, and it was a long slog, and they did it in good faith.
So they want something to come of that investigation.
What's that?
They want something to come of that investigation and not necessarily their own individual recourse.
That investigation, they'd like to know that what they shared was meaningful and to understand what it meant in the context of the whole issue. Were they alone? Were they not alone?
Gotcha.
And I think we all need to understand that. And Dan Snyder professes to want change. Well, that's great. Let's find out what the problems actually were and how they were allowed to fester. And then you can decide on what meaningful change is.
Well, we appreciate the time. It's Lisa Banks, who's one of the attorneys representing the former employees of the Washington football team. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is kind of what I was saying yesterday about the net result. Like, yes, you do want to ultimately learn all the whys. Mm-hmm. But, and you can say this is because of PR, spin, whatever. They've hired Jason Wright as team president, African-American. They've hired Julie Donaldson. I don't know what her job title is, but she's kind of like their media person.
She's a big silly. She's a VP.
And now Tanya Snyder. And what I'd say is maybe it's all spin and PR to try and keep your eye off the ball of the harassment and all that stuff. But he's hired good people who have good reputations, including his wife, who has a good reputation now on the charity side.
Right.
So.
Okay. Well, why didn't he hire 5 years ago? Doesn't the timing make you scratch your head a little bit?
Yeah, no, I understand that. But my point is, moving forward, these are good people that I think will improve the culture in those workplaces.
But
culture definitely. Rivera started it.
The timing is curious because I'm guessing he's sensing a suspension coming down the pike, and with his wife as the co-CEO, it's his closest confidant. I mean, she's going to be in the building
He'll still be running the
she's
show.
She's going to be Dan Snyder
yeah,
for the most part.
Well, we'll see what comes of it.